Journalists and a lot of other people tend to think that their big danger is the internet. But actually what a lot of journalists forget is that change is something which has always been disrupting journalism. The second half of the 20th century was very unusual in that it didn't get disrupted very much. And journalism always has to shift. Technology, economics, society are always moving it. And the thing that journalists actually have to adjust to is that they can never get away from change. And particularly in the digital era, which is going to unleash successive waves of change, they're going to see a lot of change. Big general interest daily newspapers have a lot of trouble with their business model and they are under threat. But magazines are doing relatively well. Books are under some pressure. Weekly newspapers, not too bad. Television journalism, well, mainstream television has some problems with its business model, but there are lots of new opportunities for people to do new things. So there's up and there's down. The internet isn't all of the problems that newspapers have. It has made their problems worse. But they've been suffering difficulties ever since radio began, followed then by TV, then satellite TV and cable TV. All of those new competitors, meaning that much more information moved around the system, made life difficult for newspapers. Their difficulties quite definitely did not begin with the internet, although the internet aggravated them. The decline is pretty general and pretty universal. You can look at some countries where the internet has hit newspapers much later. Examples, for example, include Germany, Finland, Japan. Those are countries where the newspapers had very strong, loyal followings. And the effect of the internet was really seen about 10 years later than it was in places like America. But actually, it's happened everywhere. Digital journalism is definitely an opportunity. To start with, it's an opportunity for the consumers of news. They have far more sources from which they can choose. They don't like a small selection of news outlets that they used to have. They can pick from a wider selection. But it also allows people to adjust things, invent things, create things, do new things. The disadvantage of the danger is that you don't have a business model which provides big enough journalism institutions to stay strong when they're under attack. But it could very, very well be that the small startups of today are going to be the big institutions of tomorrow. People play the game a lot of wondering which newspaper is going to turn off or at least turn down its print. Now in Britain a lot of people think that that might be The Guardian because that's been a newspaper that's done a lot of innovation and been very aggressive in the digital area. My bet would be actually that the first newspaper to do that in London will be the Financial Times, because they have an entirely wired readership. They're already starting experiments in seeing whether they can't bribe people to give up printed paper. They're starting these experiments in the United States, actually. So I think it'll be the Financial Times. It probably won't be a sudden switch off in anybody's case. They will reduce the frequency of print, 2 times a week, 3 times a week, or maybe once a week, rather than just stopping it dead. I think that journalism has a great future. A few newspapers have a rather bleak future because their business model is just not suited to current conditions. But there's no reason why the values and importance of journalism, long established, long with us, can't be adapted to new circumstances. So I'm an optimist. People who want to be journalists ought to read out of print because what it will do is equip them to navigate some very turbulent change. I can't necessarily prescribe everybody's every move, but what I can do is show them what skills and aptitudes and attitudes they're going to need to find their way through what will continue to be fairly turbulent change for quite a long time.